I bet you are feeling it too. The internet is changing. The original follower model that once made the internet so exciting for creators is all but gone. In my opinion, the subscribe button is foundational to this shift. But what will the internet look like in the future, and how will subscriptions play a part? To help us figure this out, I invited Simon Owens. He's a seasoned journalist and a media expert. Simon's newsletter covers the latest trends in both the creator economy and traditional media. He started his career in local reporting and later wrote for major outlets like The Atlantic, Politico, and Forbes. So Simon, what I know about you is that you are a long-time journalist, you are a marketer, you're a PR professional, and your writing has appeared in The Atlantic, New York Magazine, Forbes, Harvard's, and The Next Web, and so on, so on. What else would you like to add to this little introduction?
I mean, just mainly that I worked basically in every facet of the industry, from working full time in traditional, like I started out in traditional newspapers as basically a beat local news reporter. Also worked at U.S. News and World Report, and as you mentioned, I've written for several mainstream publications, and and then I also worked in PR and marketing and stuff like that. And I determined some years back that I like having 100% control over both my content and also my kind of career destiny. And that's why I kind of struck off on my own, and I like working independently. It's not that I will never, write for a traditional media outlet, again, but I think I will always have the foundation of my business as something where I own the distribution and the monetization.
One of the reasons why you are now on Substack?
Yeah, I mean, so like I think there are like kind of two categories of creators. Those are the ones that they want to build everything from scratch. They want to have something that's completely customizable. They like to be able to design everything. And there are people like me who just want to focus as much as his time as possible on creating, the best content and just have like a best of class publishing platform. And I think that's kind of like what Substack is. It handles all the basics. It's always updating its design for modern times. I have to spend very little time thinking about the tech and design and can focus on, the content creation side. And I think that's kind of the superpower of Substack is it's like a free platform to use, and it's very simple and straightforward.
We have like this writer heart and this marketing brain, I'd say. And is there anything that you would miss from the email service provider ConvertKit then? From a, let's say, writer that is also interested in marketing and PR?
Well, I mean, I've never used ConvertKit, but it has, like in terms of, I'm guessing what you're asking is like, do I miss having the more kind of advanced features that you'll get on a ConvertKit or a MailChimp or something like that? Not really. All those extra bells and whistles, I probably wouldn't use most of them, and it's probably not worth the hassle and the complexity. I mean, if I were to significantly scale up my business where I had someone whose full-time job it was to, worry about optimization, stuff like that, would I start to be like, oh, it would be nice if we could A/B test this or create like a drip campaign or something like that. If I had someone whose like full-time job was email marketing or whatever. But since I don't have someone and it's just me, I would rather just have the more simple platform.
Yeah, I totally feel this. And Simon, could you, take us a bit on this journey? When did you start on Substack? I know that you now have like 15,000 subscribers. When did you start? And could you share a bit more about this journey?
So I actually started on Tiny Letter. That's where I first started my first newsletter, and Tiny Letter kind of walked so Substack could run. It was the first editorial focused newsletter platform that was completely free to use. Prior to that, your only option if you wanted to run a newsletter was something like MailChimp or Constant Contact or one of these ESPs, where you had to pay a monthly fee up front, and it had a lot of bells and whistles that were more kind of geared towards email marketing versus editorial newsletters. So I started that newsletter back in 2014, and it was really just a place to kind of, I thought of it almost as just like another social media account, in the sense it was like just a way to collect subscribers and then send them to articles I was published elsewhere, whether it was for a mainstream publication or I was publishing on Medium as kind of like my kind of go-to place back then to publish. So for the first, like, I would say 6 or 7 years, that's all I was using that newsletter for, is like I would publish something on Medium or somewhere, and then I would send out a newsletter to my subscribers saying, here's this article I just published elsewhere and maybe a roundup of a few more links. So because of that, because I wasn't publishing any original content on the newsletter, it wasn't growing very fast because people weren't sharing the newsletter. They were sharing the articles on Medium, and then maybe they would see the call to action and sign up. So from 2014 to 2020 or so, I only had like 1,000 subscribers on my newsletter. And I moved over to Substack in 2019 simply because TinyLetter had been purchased by MailChimp. MailChimp wasn't doing anything to continue to iterate on the product. I didn't move over there because I wanted to launch a paid newsletter right away. I just thought that Substack was, it had better features than TinyLetter simply because they were actually, focused on investing in the product. So long story short, started on TinyLetter 2014, moved over to Substack on 2019, and then launched the paid version of the newsletter in 2020 on Substack. And at that point, I had maybe 1,200 free subscribers. And then, as you mentioned, now I have about 15,000.
Can you also share how many paid subscribers you have right now, Simon?
So it's several hundred. So I'm making in the mid 5 figures in terms of, at least on the subscription side. I also monetize a few other ways as well.
Yeah, that's cool. And you are also a Substack bestseller. And are you proud of being a Substack bestseller?
Not that proud. I mean, I guess sort of, but like I'll be proud once I get that orange check mark that denotes you have 1,000 paying subscribers. That's the thing I'm really waiting for.
What do you think? How long will it take to reach this milestone?
I'm hoping February 2025 at the very latest.
I think that you then imported these 1,000 subscribers you had and then started with these thousands. And from there, you built like 14,000 in the last years then.
Yes, that's correct.
And what are the paid perks that you started then offering? I think you started doing this like 4 years ago then, that you said, I also have like this paid subscription. And what are the perks for paid members?
So that's the funny part. And it's always kind of hard to answer that question because for the first 3 years, it was kind of just a hodgepodge of things that I didn't really clearly define, because I was more focused on growing the free list because I knew that I needed to grow my audience if I wanted to get serious about converting it. So I tried everything from just a basic patronage model where 100% of the content was for free. And then I would have these calls to action be like, if you want to support my work, become a paid subscriber. That worked to a certain extent. That got me like my first few hundred subscribers, but like that's only so effective, especially if you're not running like a mission oriented, like support me because it's helping to support this larger cause type of thing. So those subscribers, they were harder to convert, and they also churned at very high levels because the very second they entered any kind of financial hardship and needed to cut back on subscriptions, my newsletter was always the first to go because they were just doing it out of the goodness of their heart, not because I was locking any content behind a paywall. And then I would like experiment with different things. Like I was doing this thing called office hours for a while where it was like twice a month I would get on a Zoom call and anybody who wanted to show up to that call could come. I tried doing like Q&A type stuff where people could submit questions and then I would answer them in the email, like paid subscribers could submit questions. So I was just experimenting with various things. It wasn't until this year, in fact, within the last few months, that I got really serious about defining exactly what you get if you become a paid subscriber. I would say there are two kind of main things that you get now. Every new paid subscriber, they receive an automated email with a Calendly link in it where they can book a half-hour introductory phone call with me. And that's been like a great way to get people because like you form these parasocial relationships. They also want to like pick your brain about their own businesses. So that's a great motivator for them to, convert into a paid subscriber. Actually, just like an hour ago, I had one of those conversations with my paid subscriber. I do several of those per week. That's a big perk, is you get an introductory phone call with me. And then the other thing is I create these, like I do these kind of my bread and butter now is I do these long form evergreen interviews with really successful media operators and creators and stuff like that, kind of what we're doing here, where I have them walk me through like every facet of their business, how they built it and everything like that. Really kind of like honing in on actionable advice that other creators and media entrepreneurs can take. And then I publish those in two formats. One is a free podcast where I create the free podcast and the free video, but I also create like a full transcript, but I lock most of that transcript behind a paywall. And then there's 100% paid podcast where if you want to if you want to access the podcast, the video, or the transcript, that's all locked behind a paywall. So I'm publishing of those 4 of those free episodes with the paywall transcript per month, and then 4 completely paid episodes per month. So there's like a growing library of evergreen content that you get access to as a subscriber. And I think I really focused on evergreen content because that means the longer the subscription goes and the bigger the library, how valuable it is to new subscribers, because it's not like you're just getting the content going forward. You can go into that archive and see like a huge number of case studies of how other creators built these like really successful businesses.
Also, from what I'm seeing from my tribe and all the other successful writers, is that they are offering much more than just a newsletter. Is this also something that you've analyzed within the last years?
Well, Substack has come out with stats across their entire network, and they said that Substack writers who also offer some kind of video or audio component as part of their subscriptions see a much higher percentage of conversions for paid. So they have actual, like, a macro large piece of data that shows that that's more beneficial to your subscription business if you offer other kinds of media in addition to the writing.
And why do you think this is? Is it like that people want to connect more with the writer?
I think it's a couple things. So like, one, I think audio and video people can form more parasocial relationships with you. So they don't get when just reading your writing. They know what your face looks like. They know what your voice sounds like. It creates that kind of personal connection. And when you have that personal connection, they're more likely to convert into a paid subscriber. Another part is just like offering more utility, more ways to reach them. Like, I don't know, I'm guessing you listen to podcasts. You probably listen to podcasts at different times than when you're reading something or watching something, like when you're cleaning the dishes or working out or going on a walk. So that's just additional utility of like, you're offering them a way to consume your content outside of just like when they're sitting in front of their computer. So I think that kind of more diversified way of offering them ways to consume your content increases the perceived value of your subscription.
Yeah, and now in the palm of our hands, we can also see this media tab. This is new. You might have seen this already on Substack Notes, the social media network on Notes, which I love. So, I have my smartphone here, and then I can click on this media tab, and then I would see, for instance, your podcast, and then from another writer who's doing videos or so, I would see the video. So hopefully it's not like a TikTokification somehow. I love it because I can discover other writers I've never seen before, just, talking to me if I want this. So just tap there. What do you think about this? Have you already discovered it and tried it out?
I mean, I know that they launched it. I haven't really utilized that. I don't really read a lot of stuff in the Substack app myself, or like I'll kind of look at it to see what engagement I'm getting, and then I'll like maybe glance at Substack Notes. But I'm when I'm opening the app, I'm either just looking at my feed that's on the homepage, which is mainly Substack Notes, or I'm just looking at my mentions feed.
I also always say about Notes, like the new Twitter for writers, because I think it's somehow a Twitter for writers. Of course, it's much more.
Substack Notes might be like the secret superpower of Substack in the long term when you're looking over the next 2 to 3 years, is because like it really was kind of slow to take off. And I kind of like, I had this hot take that it could be a viable Twitter replacement, but then it was very slow and the engagement wasn't that high. But now I open Substack Notes and I'm regularly seeing posts with thousands of likes and hundreds of comments. And I'm like, wow, these notes are actually, getting some reach. And so like, I wish Substack would, launch analytics for Substack Notes. I'd love to see how many people, because as you probably have noticed, I post to Substack Notes pretty often, kind of short analysis and stuff like that. And some of my posts are getting like, a couple dozen likes or comments and stuff like that. So I wonder how many people are seeing it.
How do you see Notes at the moment? How does it feel like for you? Because I know that you in the past also built a social media network for a company you were working for. So how do you see this Notes network?
I think it's just it's like an additional touch point for long form writers, which is what I love about it. Like, I was a very early Twitter user, started using it in like 2008 or so. I kind of feel you're worried about it getting too much like Twitter, I fear that's probably going to happen if it really continues to scale up, because I think that kind of, close knit feeling is part of what being part of like a small social network. So as it gets larger, there will definitely be more annoying people coming over to Substack notes. So that's going to be inevitable. One thing that frustrated me with Twitter is like if you wanted to write something longer than 140 characters, then you had to publish it elsewhere, and then you had to try to push your Twitter followers to that other place, and that was really hard. Substack it allows you to create your long form content, which you use to really build your brand and build your subscriptions and your business and stuff like that. But it also has a Twitter like social network built into it for when you have those shorter posts and stuff like that wouldn't make for a long form piece of content, and it's all integrated. It drives synergies with each other, and I think that's really great. People think they think when they say Substack, they call it a newsletter platform. Newsletters are just one of many things it does. It's a social network. It's a newsletter platform. It's just like a blog, because like the articles themselves look really good on the web. It's a podcast platform. It's a video platform. It's an image publishing platform. So that's why you're seeing like folks from like Instagram influencers, TikTok influencers, they're kind of trying to move their audiences onto Substack, where that's where they're locking stuff behind the paywall, because everything they're doing on Instagram, they can also do it on Substack, and then they can own the email addresses and monetize it more effectively. So I think you're going to start seeing more and more influencers on other platforms kind of start moving some of their audience to Substack so that they can own that have a deeper level of ownership of that audience.
And we are now like 10 years in paid subscriptions. What do you think are the benefits of paid subscription for you, for instance?
I think like the biggest benefit, it's like a recurring, predictable revenue source that can like be like a great foundation for any content business. That being said, as obviously it's getting way more saturated, so it's going to get really hard for individual creators to make a full-time living through subscriptions alone, but it's a good way to get really started early on in terms of monetizing your content, so you can get to a certain revenue base and then start thinking, okay, I've got this, how do I diversify and start generating revenue in other ways? You already know how to market that content, so then it's just like it's not that many extra steps to say, okay, I'm going to take some of this content and put it behind a paywall and charge for admission. It's a great business model for creators, even if it's not the perfect business model that's going to lead most of them to be able to quit their full-time jobs.
I'm often wondering if like the future of the internet will be like that. All the AI stuff, all the AI generated stuff will be like free. And then in the future, we will have to pay for human curated or human written content. Do you also think that this could be a thing in the future?
We're already starting to see it a little bit, is that there's a lot of consumers are getting burned by just poorly created content through AI. So I think that there will be a lot more publications openly bragging that they don't use AI, or they use it only sparingly on the edges, not to actually create the content itself.
Do you feel that we're going through a paradigm shift, like this old traditional media to now this newsletter business and everything we're seeing right now?
Yeah, like I kind of position it between legacy media and what I call and what other people call the creator economy. This kind of, I grew up in the old school blogosphere where people were starting to the early web 2.0 era, where people were starting to break off and create their own content. But the problem back then is it was very hard to monetize. But now all the monetization tools that are available that have been, available to the top tier publishers for the last 2 decades are now, easy and cheap to access for everyday creators. I think we are seeing a shift in the entire media ecosystem away from traditional publications and business models to kind of independently owned media publications. And all these like traditional publishers blame Google, Facebook for stealing their revenue models. They never acknowledge that maybe a lot of their revenue is going to the creator economy, that they just now have more competition of like millions upon millions of content creators, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. And it kind of undermines their story of these like monopolies that are just stealing all their revenue, because like YouTube now is paying out, I think like over $15 billion a year to content creators just through its like advertising revenue share. That's $15 billion that are going to independent creators that were once going to traditional, media companies and stuff like that. And I feel like in all the kind of conversation around what's happening to traditional media, there's they covered the layoffs at, at XYZ company, but don't acknowledge that there's also job growth on this other side, on the independent side. And I just think that the narrative is just completely messed up.
Hi, it's Christina. Most don't know that if you become a paid subscriber for my newsletter, The Online Writing Club, then you will also get access to the community, to live sessions, and also to courses, the Substack course, the Medium course, and so many more things that are going to come. So if you want to learn more and improve your writing, then join the Online Writing Club and get access to it. People were like used to getting everything for free. Patreon proved that people would actually pay for people they like and love, And so I think that Patreon really played a huge part of the future, what we're seeing right now.
YouTube was the first major tech platform to kind of push through this concept of sharing revenue with the creators that are giving it value. It launched its partnership program in the late 2000s. Where it started giving 55% of all the ad revenue that ran against videos with the actual creators themselves. So that was hugely revolutionary. And that's why some of the most successful creators in terms of revenue are YouTubers, because that was the first platform to really invest in its creators. And then, I think Patreon, I think Jack Conte's insight that, fan bases would actually pay for content on a recurring basis was hugely influential. And when someone's writing the history of the creator economy and the evolution of media, Patreon definitely deserves its own chapter, because it really was kind of a turning point in terms of allowing creators who didn't have super massive audiences, but small but very devoted audiences, that they could actually, monetize that. Because that was always the problem for creators up until then, is because some of them did, they were able to generate full-time livings, but it was only if they reached audiences and like millions of views per month, because the only way to monetize it back then was through advertising. And so there are creators today who have, just a few thousand regular listeners or viewers or something like that, who are able to make, thousands of dollars a month, because it's about tapping into those few hundred very devoted users. And I think Patreon definitely was the first real tool that allowed them to do that. You could also argue Kickstarter and a few others also played a role as well.
Yeah, and Patreon was like for everyone. And then with Medium, because you mentioned Medium as well, was more like for writers. When did you start writing on Medium, and how long did you like share your stories there? And how would you compare Medium to Substack?
So I was a very early adopter of Medium and a very avid supporter of Medium, because it kind of solved that problem I was talking about with Twitter. Is like anytime you publish anything long form, you had to drive people to that article. And if you were only publishing 1 or 2 articles a month, or even less than that, it just wasn't worth the effort, because it was so hard to get people to click on links and go to an article if you weren't publishing like 10 times a day. So Medium took the kind of infrastructure of a social network and applied it to long form writing. So you could publish a piece like, on a semi-regular basis, but because you were building a social media following, a social graph of followers, even if you went weeks without publishing, you could still have an audience for that piece of content, regardless of how often you published. So I thought that was really revolutionary. So I was, publishing on Medium very early on. I forget what year I did it, and I had like great success publishing on Medium in the first. I think to this day, I haven't checked recently, but I think I have like 15,000 followers on Medium, because I had a lot of success there. I think what happened is they pivoted too often. They couldn't figure out what they wanted to do, and they kept on pivoting. Like first they tried to court mainstream publishers. I don't know how long you've been on the platform. I don't know if you remember when they did this, but like
I started in 2020, but I know about all the history of Medium.
Yeah. So then it started becoming less like a social network, and they started promoting these publishers. And then, like a year into that, they completely abandoned all those publishers and pissed those off and went back to a social network. But then it was like trying to have like an algorithm that figured out what you wanted to read, but the algorithm was just really bad. Like it wasn't good at actually recommending content. So like creators like me who were seeing like really good traction on their articles before, suddenly my reach was like going away. And you had the people who were succeeding were these people who were posting like 5 times a day that were just doing volume and then trying to catch it. And like, I remember seeing like an article in the New York Times where they were reporting like, some anonymous source that Medium was seeing most of its traffic come from outside sources. It wasn't driving much traffic internally among its articles because it was just so bad at recommending content. So it just like pivoted like way too many times, so that once I stopped like achieving any kind of reach on it, then I eventually just was like, this isn't worth my time. And at that point I was doubling down on Substack and building my audience there, which was more reliable and easier to monetize. I mean, I still admire Medium as a company. I like that they're, very focused on sharing revenue and stuff like that. So I don't think it's bad. I don't think you could build a career on Medium because it would be too hard to predict your monthly revenue streams because it's based on the highs and lows of how much traffic your content gets in any month, and you don't have control over that.
Yeah, that's why I was asking you, because for me, like, Medium's like this giant aggregation platform, and then in comparison, we have Substack as a more like, it's more about like atomic relationships that are dominating on the platform. Still, I think for writers, also in 2024, it's still the best like writing platform because you can get paid right from the start. Now they opened the platform for 77 countries, also India, Brazil, and so on and so on. They are now on the platforms. People can expect to make a living writing on Medium, although I love to feature people who can make a writing. For instance, I featured one, Michelle Tahu, from Untrickled on Substack. She's writing on Medium. She earned over $15,000 with one story on Medium, So I love to feature all these like success stories because success is still possible, especially if you are a newish writer and coming, joining the platform, because somehow Medium is then recommending you and helping you grow.
Does it still penalize if you like plug your own newsletter and stuff in the? Because that was another reason I left, is they like that when they were testing out different things with the writer program, they were like, we will not recommend your article if you have like a call to action to your newsletter or something like that. So yeah, I think it could be a way to start getting paid really early, and then if it does allow you and doesn't penalize you, and you could like link to your Substack or something, so that it's at least helping you build an audience elsewhere, then yeah, I think that's really great as a way to kind of diversify your revenue. Every now and then I'm like, wow, I have those 15,000 subscribers on there. I should find some way to start posting some kind of content there to see if it gets any traction. But I don't know. I'm already on so many different platforms, and I just haven't prioritized dipping back into it.
What you could do is you could just repurpose the stuff, or just pick some as a short form post or so, some parts of your stories, and then share them on Medium and see how this is going. Because many Substack or Medium writers are also now sharing their stuff on Substack. And I know, for instance, Michael Thompson, he's also a top writer with more than 60,000. He's now a debut author, Shy by Design. He told me that he's now repurposing, his best performing stuff on Substack, and others I know they are taking their Substack stories and they're repurposing them on Medium. So this could be something that you could try. You never know.
I mean, I'm already repurposing my free newsletter onto LinkedIn newsletters, so I could just add it into my workflow that every time I send out the free newsletter and cross post it to LinkedIn, I also cross post it to Medium. Medium doesn't allow you to schedule posts, does it?
You can only schedule post if you share the story on your own profile. So if you are on your own profile, you can schedule posts. Also, if you have your own publication, you could then also schedule your posts.
Yeah, I'm not worried about publications, so if I'm just publishing to my own
you can do
account,
this.
I can schedule posts. Okay, because I always schedule the LinkedIn newsletter to go out the next day, so I'm not cannibalizing my Substack newsletter.
But I read somewhere on your newsletter that you said that the LinkedIn newsletter isn't getting so much traction or something like this, so much
Yeah.
visibility.
Yeah, I mean, LinkedIn is just such a huge network, so I think so it does give you more visibility. So like it does, like I have 15,000 subscribers on Substack. I only launched a LinkedIn newsletter like a couple of months ago. It's already at 7,000 subscribers.
Wow.
So I
Yeah.
mean, it really does help you grow. And LinkedIn obviously has over 1 billion users, so it's and it's obvious that it's promoting your content within the LinkedIn ecosystem when you're using LinkedIn newsletters. So it is a way to tap in to that user base, but it's clear that LinkedIn newsletter subscribers are nowhere near as engaged as subscribers on a normal newsletter.
Hey, do you want to meet Simon Owens live? Then join the Online Writing Club with the Online Writing School to get access to our event.
So the open rate is maybe 20%, and maybe even that's being optimistic versus my Substack newsletter, which is, the open rate's above 40%. And so it's obvious that people who sign up for a LinkedIn newsletter are just not as engaged, but still I'm reaching additional audience that I might not reach just through my Substack newsletter alone. And I can, promote the Substack newsletter within the LinkedIn newsletter and through the LinkedIn account and stuff like that.
Ooh, that's interesting. So I knew about the LinkedIn newsletter, but I didn't know exactly, how it works. And could you also take your subscribers from LinkedIn with you, or is it no?
Nope.
Okay.
Can't export your subscribers. You can't even see their email addresses. Yeah, and you don't see how many email addresses it distributes to. You don't see your individual click rates. It's not a true newsletter platform. So like
Mm.
it could never replace any like a Mailchimp or ConvertKit or Substack or anything like that.
I see. Okay, so your like creator funnel is then to promote it on LinkedIn and then try to get people on Substack because
Yeah,
otherwise you wouldn't like own them. Then
yeah,
subscribers are similar to YouTube where you also have like subscribers, but you're not really owning your audience.
yeah,
I
yep,
see. Because I think 7,000 within a few months. This is pretty freaking bonkers. I think.
yeah, yeah. But it's not an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah, but you could also see in the stats whether or how many people are coming from LinkedIn to your Substack. Then.
Well, I don't know. If they click within the inbox itself, I don't know if that registers as a LinkedIn referral or a direct referral. If I were publishing on like a WordPress site or something like that, I could create customized tags and use those in the LinkedIn newsletter. So then I could see exactly who's landing on my website after clicking on a link to the LinkedIn newsletter. But I don't know. I don't care enough to do all that.
Hamish McKenzie, where he was like talking about like that social media has like this mental illness, and then traditional media has like this physical illness, and that Substack tries to address both problems and makes it like the best place on the internet. Would you like agree? So we were talking already about notes and like this cool thing that you can do like anything on the platform, but would you also see this or feel this at the moment that it's like trying to address both of these problems and making it like a really lovely and also lovable platform for us.
Yeah, I just don't know how much he can form that lovable feeling, especially as it grows. Like I think those mentally ill people he talks about that are on Twitter and Threads and everywhere else. Like I'm a semi popular creator, and I have like stuff like go viral semi often, especially on Threads now. And there's like they're always going to attract those like mentally ill people that you're just like, why did you leave that comment? Like, what are you doing with your life where like you're spending like time writing these comments on people you don't know that are just like completely insane or just have like inane criticism. I don't know, like 99% of the time if I see something I don't like on the internet, I don't comment on it. I just like scroll past it and don't look at it. And as Substack gets larger, there's going to be more of those people coming to that platform that are mentally ill, and that's inevitable. That being said, I think, the larger point he's trying to make is he's not optimizing for it. So because all these other platforms are focused on, generating engagement, which then leads to advertising money, advertising revenue, Substack will be forever geared towards subscriptions. And subscriptions, you don't get subscribers by annoying people. Like they're not like that kind of engagement doesn't produce any value for you as a creator. So it provides less incentive for you to be annoying, as a creator, or to get or less incentive to do engagement bait and stuff like that. And I kind of agree with his stance on that by reorienting the revenue model towards subscriptions, a lot of like the terrible things that have happened on the internet over the last 20 years, those incentives go away. Especially, I don't know what it's like in Germany, but especially in America with far right wing platforms that have been able to generate just a ton of revenue because they just optimize with what's called rage bait. That's just like getting people angry and stuff like that. And I don't think rage bait will thrive as much on Substack as it did on Facebook. So I do kind of agree with that.
I know that you think that Meta doesn't understand the creator economy. Do you think that Substack is understanding it?
Oh yeah, I mean they know that Substack is the only creator platform. I mean, other than Patreon, but like creators follow the incentives, and exposure and marketing is only one very small incentive, and that's why most people still post to like Instagram and TikTok because it allows them to build a following. But like the much greater incentive is them actually getting paid. So Substack gives away to the creators 90% of all the revenue that's generated on Substack. So as long as that's always their business model, they will always have all their incentives around serving the creator versus serving advertisers, like what Meta currently does. And one of the things that YouTube did is it recognized it formed a balance. Like it created something that was really good for advertisers, but it also really good for creators. And that's why the top video creators today, they're all producing content on YouTube. Even the ones that first get famous on Instagram or TikTok, eventually their business reaches a certain size where they start trying to like move their audience base over to YouTube because they know that's the way to build like a deeper relationship with their fans and also to, monetize much more effectively.
That's interesting. I've never thought about this before, but yeah, you might be right about this.
I mean, think of the cultural relevance of YouTube. It's like it's way bigger than like you can name several YouTube stars off the top of your head that are just like huge. Could you name a Facebook star? I don't think you could necessarily.
I found also on your Substack newsletter, you were like talking about lifetime subscriptions. I've never heard about this. Of course, I know about lifetime subscriptions, but I didn't know they were a thing. And you shared there that more and more publishers are now experimenting with this. Do you think this will be something that people like opt for a large upfront sum instead of like this monthly credit card fee?
I think it's a really good option in any kind of subscription strategy because there are a lot of people who are becoming more skeptical of subscriptions because then they have to like be constantly monitoring, like every time their subscription is up for renewal, am I getting enough value for that? They find it very stressful. I think I find it stressful. You probably find it stressful as well. It's like, am I actually using all these services that I'm subscribed to? Whereas if you just name a large upfront sum, it makes it somewhat easier in their head to calculate, okay, if the sum is $500, could I see myself getting $500 of value over the entire however many years that I use this service? And even though it's a lot more money up front, they like the kind of finite nature to it. And so I think that there's a certain kind of subscriber that might want to do it. It also is a great option for just almost like raising like investor capital in the sense that if you're a content creator who has been making a lot of free content for some period of time and you're just launching your subscriptions, but you want to invest in your content, maybe go full time, offering like a lifetime subscription one and converting a lot of your followers into that lifetime subscription, the one-time payment, that's a lot more money, can deliver a huge sum to your bank account so that you have that cushion so that as you're trying to build your main subscription base, you at least have that big cushion to draw from, because otherwise you're just like, you're starting at a very low base. And so if you're making a salary and then you decide to go full time as a creator, that could be a huge decrease in your take home pay. So having a bunch of of your followers buy those lifetime subscriptions, it could create some cushion in your bank account that can help you get through those like first 6 to 12 months as you're trying to like build up your recurring subscription base. So I think that's another way that it can be advantageous to have that in addition to your lower price monthly subscriptions.
Cool. Do you think that Substack will ship such a feature as a lifetime subscription?
Does it not have one now? I thought it does. I thought there's like some
We
kind
have
of
founding members, but I think
yeah,
this
isn't
is
that
on
what
an
it is?
annual. This is on an annual basis.
Oh,
I
it's a
think.
recurring payment still?
I thought this would be a recurring payment, yes. Hey, it's Christina God. Thanks so much for listening. What do you think about the future of the internet? What do you think about the future of social media and followers versus subscribers? Hop into the comments of my online writing club newsletter and ask me questions and tell me a bit more about what you think about the future. Is there anything else you would like to share about, like, let's call it your social media strategy and the role that Substack plays in the strategy as an expert?
So like I spent a lot of time just curating news and offering like short commentary, and now that's most of my free content, whereas I used to publish a lot more kind of long form writing and stuff like that for free subscribers. And I realized that like people will do stuff out of the goodness of their heart because they like you, but that really as a strategy only goes so far. So like kind of going back to that patronage model of, subscribe to, become a paid subscriber to support me. That strategy really has diminishing returns and is like really incredibly hard to do. So, the kind of the reorientation of my strategy over the last few months has been like offer as much value for the paid subscribers as possible, because at the end of the day, it's going to come down to how much value are you creating for me in determining whether someone, becomes a paid subscriber. So I would say that's like been the biggest shift in my strategy over the last several months, is trying to create more content to put behind the paywall.
Yeah, Simon. So thank you so much for like giving us all these insights. And now I have, let's say, a few rapid fire questions for you. Question number one would be, I know that you're looking for more entrepreneurs to feature in your podcast. And what type of people are you looking for at the moment? So in which area should they succeed?
So my minimum criteria for coming on my podcast is you have to be generating enough revenue to support yourself, at least, if not have employees. So I get a lot of inquiries from people who are like, hey, I'm on Substack. I have a Substack newsletter. I have like 50 paid subscribers. That's great. That's a great start. But like the whole goal of my podcast is I want people to learn from the world's most successful creators or media entrepreneurs, so that they can take their strategies and incorporate in theirs. So I keep that kind of minimum threshold. So that would be the first criteria. I do think that I over index on newsletter kind of businesses. I would love to have like more video creators and stuff like that. Like, especially like I would love to like focus more on just interviewing really successful YouTubers. And when I say really successful, I don't mean you have to have 1 million followers. They're like really successful YouTubers who have 50,000 subscribers and they're making, really good money because they've built like they've figured out how to like really thrive within their niche and offer all these kinds of products and stuff like that. So I'd love to have, more YouTubers, more video creators, more podcasters, maybe some more people who are focused, who are succeeding with like affiliate and e-commerce and stuff like that, creators on that side. So yeah, those are some of the categories that I would like to see more of on my podcast.
Cool. And how can people then connect with you if they'd love to, get on your podcast?
So like if someone wants a response from me, the best way to get that response is to send me an email, because I have an entire workflow of how I answer emails. And that workflow doesn't apply to DMs and stuff like that, because I answer emails like one time per day in like a set period of time. So my biggest suggestion is don't DM me on LinkedIn or Instagram or anything like that. Just email me at simonowens@gmail.com. You can find, I make my email address very widely available. So, and then also just like write me a few or not even a few paragraphs, just one paragraph, just like actually explaining what your publication is, what its business model is and stuff like that. And that'll like better make it easier for me to assess whether I think you're a good fit for my podcast.
Nice. And I know that you moved from your apartment to your house. So what are you looking for this weekend, doing in your house? Do you have, I don't know. I can see it like in the background, your your light and everything. Do you want to, I don't know, do some decoration or something?
Yeah. So this is a very bland background. Obviously, I shoot a lot of YouTube videos for my podcast. And one thing that I've always hated in my previous apartment is I had the most bland background. So I do get some noise from the street, which is unfortunate, but I do like that I now have a window that's giving me natural light, in the front. I also have a ring light in front of me as well. So I like the more natural light. And then, I need to put like some posters up and stuff like that. So there's a more varied background. I'm also going to be putting like a bookshelf right here. So hopefully there's a little bit more character inside my podcast videos going forward.
Yeah, sure. We learned a lot about you, about your personality. There's a lot of character here in your newsletter and everything you're doing. Thank you so much, Simon, for hopping on this call with me today.
Thank you. This is a lot of fun.
Thanks for listening. See you in the next episode.